Well, hello, friends. Welcome to Investment Immigration Conversations. I'm your host, as ever, Carolyn Lee, principal and founder of Carolyn Lee Pllc, a U.S. investment immigration law firm dedicated to helping clients build their futures with investment immigration. Well, I hope you all have combed your hair before coming today, because we have today Mr. Bob Kraft, president of IIUSA and chairman of First Pathway Partners. Welcome, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. Pleasure to be here.
So wonderful. And to boot, Greg Sheehan. I've got to get my notes out to read his title. He is the director, newly minted, of EB-5 investor platform and USCIS compliance at Behring Companies. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here at share a screen with the pillars of EB-5.
Oh my gosh. And I must say, Greg comes to us from IPO, from having a long career within the IPO before joining the private sector recently. So he has been in there seeing things, and from that perspective, and we're going to try to get some insights from his experience there as well. But we've got to start with Bob. Bob, so this is a retrospective on this incredible year where we at last have been blessed with reauthorization. I don't want to go so far back to like 2015, but I'd like to take us back to what I kind of think of as the run-up to the passage of RIA. And I would kind of mark that as late 2021, October, November 2021. Take us back around then and just tell the story, please, from your perspective. And I want us, the three of us, to cover the L's, the lapse, the legislation, the litigation, and we'll do just a little bit of looking forward after that. So, Bob, bring us to where we are now from then.
Well, I'll try. I mean, it's boy, that seems like yesterday, doesn't it? But you know, the battle, the journey has been many years. And Carolyn, you and so many others in the industry are regional center members and members of IIUSA and AILA, and there were so many organizations that were intimately involved in, you know, moving the legislation forward and in getting a win. You know, the lapse was unfortunate. We thought we had this thing pretty much done. And then, as everyone knows, Senator Graham stood up on the Senate floor and objected to unanimous consent. So that pushed us into the lapse. And that was tough for the industry, for sure. But, you know, in a way, as I look back on it, it turned out to be a good thing for the industry. And I think that, you know, the legislation that we ended up with is really good for the industry long term, and it comports with the original intent of the law, which was established in 1990 and then modified in 92 with the Regional Center Pilot Program, was to provide passage to the United States for individuals who are willing to think like an entrepreneur, to risk their capital, and to create 10 jobs. And the vision at the time, and it was Senator Kennedy that was the main sponsor of the law, was to drive economic development throughout the United States in areas, high unemployment areas, rural areas, that if not for EB-5, a project would not get off the ground or get completed. So, you know, it was kind of a but-for, you know, perfect situation. The vision was for those people that were willing to risk their capital, think like an American entrepreneur. Those are the people that we'd like to attract to this country. And and as a result of that, we create American jobs, and then these people would spend more money and become part of the American fabric and contribute to this great country. So, it was a great vision. It got a little sidetracked over the years and, forced us into many, many battles with respect to improvement on the program that would take it back to its original intent, because it becomes skewed over the last probably 7-8 years. There were some legally taken, I don't want to call it manipulations, but adjustments to TEAs. And there are a number of things that really distorted the program and took it away from the original vision. I always thought of EB-5 similar to a new market tax credit program, which allocates funding across the country evenly, so the whole country benefits and rural areas benefit.
So you really do view the RIA as being corrective.
Very much so. And I think that, long term, even though we certainly were hurt by the lapse, we lost momentum in the marketplace, but that's coming back quickly. And I think we're going to be stronger and better for it. And I believe that Senator Leahy and Senator Grassley's continued support of the program to get it done properly, to more evenly parse EB-5 funding across the country, and to protect the investor primarily, to eliminate maybe some of the soft spots in the program that allowed people to take advantage of the program for their own benefit, not for the investor's benefit. It's going to serve all of us very well. So I feel real good about where we are. But it was it was tough, and you were very involved, Carolyn, behind the scenes, and very appreciative. Aaron Grau. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the people that were involved. It was certainly a team effort and industry effort. And, we finally got there.
Well, I want to take the opportunity, Bob, also to thank you for your leadership. I think we had some tough moments in there in the trenches and pockets of uncertainty, and there were these great forces at work. And when we turned to you during those tough moments, you really lent that strength of resolve and confidence to the team working the legislation. And that got us to the finish line. So thank you.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Thank you very much. But it was sincerely a joint effort. Many, many people worked very hard, and Aaron Grau did a great job. You did a great job, Bill Gresser. I mean, our board of directors, Ayla. There were a lot of advocates for the program, and and everybody was pretty much committed to the same thing. I even think that some of the forces that were opposed understood toward the end that, okay, it's not exactly what I want, but compromise is something that has to be done in life, in politics and legislation. And they say that politics and business are both full contact sports, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you put the two together, and it was pretty tough at times, but everybody kind of kept their head and tried to do the right thing. And at the end, logic prevailed.
Well, and I do wonder, I mean, was it logic prevailed? There were, looking back and having had the privilege of being in the trenches really for years with you, it's hard for me to sort of piece out and unthread how did this really all happen and come together? Because I had been hearing from 2015 onward, Grassley and Leahy are going to get rolled. They were rolled, X number of times. They're going to keep getting rolled. And ultimately, they weren't. They prevailed. We have RIA. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on that, Bob, because in our conversations leading up to this event, you said something that was striking to me. You said you knew they were not going to get rolled. How did you know that? What were your convictions?
Well, I guess my belief was the other message that was being communicated throughout the industry, and this was from the other side, was that Senator Grassley and Senator Leahy really wanted to kill the program. You know, that what they were doing was to cause a slow death, that they weren't supportive of the program, and that this was their way of killing it. And I never bought that at all. I guess I spent too much time with both Senator Leahy and Senator Grassley to believe that. I mean, I saw two men who were committed to the program, who believed in the program, who felt that the program needed to be reformed in order for it to reach its true potential. And in spite of the embarrassment in the state of Vermont with one of the regional centers there, where we talked about this the other day, where there was a hearing that I was actually at, and it was the day after the Vermont Regional Center deal blew up. And Senator Leahy was on the dais, and you could tell he was just absolutely crushed that happened in his state. And I would say that most men and women who had been so supportive of a program and then had that type of embarrassment right in their backyard, which she had nothing to do certainly with, but would be apt to back away from the program just out of sheer frustration, being upset with what happened. And, you know, enough's enough. You know, I'm done with this. I supported it all these years, and look what happened. And I'm going to walk away from it. But he did not do that. And Senator Grassley and Senator Leahy, both, having been rolled a number of times, continued to fight. And they were always the subject matter expert on the program. And they always believed in the true potential of the program. And they never wavered from their belief, in spite of all the challenges they had, the disappointments they had from fellow party members that supposedly were supportive, and all of a sudden, you know, reversed on them and caused the program to just get short-term extensions and not be reformed and improved. You know, basically maintaining what had been a good program, but flawed in many ways, which they wanted to correct.
Well, I mean, let's pivot to you, Greg. A flawed program, some would say, is what you came into when you joined IPO in 2018. What was that like? I mean, so 2018, we were kind of like right in the middle of the drama, right?
Sure.
Yeah. What was that like?
And I hadn't really seen what the drama was leading up to it. For me, it was a new opportunity, a new job. Getting involved with what I think is a great program, a complex form type that was really exciting for me with my prior immigration experience, my MBA. It really like pointed me into this form type. And I'm reminded of a hearing that could be the same one with director at the time, CISNA, and Dan Rideau taking questions about EB-5. And it was very, I wouldn't say combative, but it was, you know, there was a murder board on the inside where you have to look at the mirror and you have to say, these are the questions we're going to get. And I think USCIS took it as an opportunity to say, well, we do need help to make this better. We need help from Congress. We need help at the DHS level, because what we're working with clearly can be improved. It shouldn't be dragged out and shot. It should be reformed in a meaningful way. And so when I saw that early on, that might have been in 2018, I'm not sure, but that was one of my first exposures to the interaction between USCIS and members of Congress, just really pointing a finger at the cracks, right? So that was exciting for me, because here I am saying, well, what could I do to learn more about where this is going? Where are the flaws from the inside? And you have, you know, conversations on the inside about things that could be done better, where we need help, what we could be doing better. And that was kind of like the initial, kind of like a shake, you know, like this is something that needs more attention. We still have to do a great job, but there's a different future than the track that we're on.
And so what did you see? In terms of what was working, to be fair, and what needed improvement, and did these insights sort of strike you right away, or did they evolve over time? Did they change? What was working and what wasn't working so well?
Right. So things happening in Vermont were a clear example of things that could have gone a different way if the product was rolled out in a different way, perhaps with more support or a different eye towards where these problems could be seen and redirected or clarified at an earlier stage. So I think when it comes to what we've achieved with the RAA is more compliance, more data, more ability to have an understanding of where these things are coming from, who the partnerships are they solid, you know, figuring out names and like looking at who the developer has worked with in the past and what their history is, what their success rate is, and kind of just looking at an entire project from a potential investor's point of view to see if there's anything that we can do to ask more questions at an RFE stage that might people put on alert. Hey, we're looking at what you're putting together and it looks a lot like something else that didn't go well. And so from an internal point of view, just kind of taking a deeper dive, you know, it's a change from assuming everything's going to go right to saying, all right, we see where things break down. This is a big capital stack going the wrong way. Let's ask more questions. And to be able to have conversations like that.
Was it Vermont? You know, it was sort of a shocking event to us in the private sector side. Did it feel that way? I don't know if you were able to discern that in 2018. Was it a shockwave on that side as well?
As I was coming in, I think if you were to Google EB-5 bad stuff, right? Like whatever search term you want, Vermont's going to get most of the hits. And so that was kind of the indoctrination when you come in, like, look, there's a bad reputation out there because of some bad actors that are going to take most of the publicity away from the good actors. And that's kind of like where you start, like, what is IPO? And what is your role as an adjudicator? And essentially it cements the idea that you're going to look at every individual circumstance and it's with its own blinders on, but you still need to develop some awareness of what the whole space looks like and what it's going through and how people are responding to the RFPs that we put out or the decisions that we make, knowing that business responds a lot faster than government can. So there's kind of an interplay there at maybe a larger policy level that that could be a deeper conversation for somebody who is involved in that and trying to structure the way that the information is given out to the public. But from an adjudication perspective, you know, when you see a flat tire on a car, you know, you're going to look at the tires on the next car.
That is so interesting to me, Greg, because that to me shows the difficult job that adjudicators have, because on the one hand, it's every single case. The case is sort of like this siloed event that you've got to look at. But it sounds like the examiners are also thinking about a larger responsibility. You know, what message is being put out there with this individual adjudication? Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sounds right. And I think people have a tendency to carry over prior work into the new communication with somebody else and just develop biases. And I think that's why working on these projects together in a team-based concept is the best way to provide clarity amongst those who are working the decision-making. So, you know, you've got an economist who's going to be working on a project while somebody else works on source and path of funds at a 526 level. And then communications that go back and forth from there give us the opportunity to say, are we making the right decision? Is there anything else that we need to ask? So I might have an opportunity to go back to my economist and say, so this was approved 3 years ago, but, you know, can we just like double check and make sure that we're still good to go, that everything's moving according to plan? So now I've got an extra set of eyes on it. And that's my responsibility to see, you know, are people being approved lately? Has there been a gap? And why is there a gap? What do I need to do? And it's putting all the pieces together in different ways that make every new case an adventure. And it's tough to systemize, you know, like it's tough to aggregate everybody's, you know, presentations to IPO.
Well, and I'm sure there's efficiency costs too, right? Because on the one hand, to me, when I hear you speak, that does sound like the best approach, because these are very complex deals. And then, you know, there's the investor piece of it. So the team approach with the different expertise seems like the way to go, but then that could slow things down unless there's like a whole kind of machine built to run efficiently. So were there like efficiency bleeds, and, you know, how, in terms of that perspective, like the efficiency, because we're very focused on processing times, right? And how long
Right.
they are. Open question, you know, what is, you know, is there a culture of efficiency? I mean, why do we have, why is it taking so long in your view?
A lot of paper is very difficult.
Mhm.
The USCIS looked at the N400 form type and tried to figure out ways to pull as much data as they could into one system. And you know how long this took. If you're paying attention to the M400, and this has been, the Ellis system has been constantly in development and trying to make it better. So the idea that if we just make everything system-based and data-based as a concept is great. But then when you take it and you put it out to use, then the feedback comes in and you have to fix it. And I think IPO has kind of seen that and is waiting for that to get better while developing a more futuristic approach towards data and paperless filings, which will get, if you're the economist, you can see the project at the same time that I see source of funds. We can have a conversation with the complete form that we see online at the same time. And now at IPO, or at least in my experience, when it was paper-based, I would have the file. You don't, I have it, right? And so, and I ask you about something that's in the file, and Carolyn, you said, well, I need to see it, obviously. So now I have to bring it in to my house from Washington, D.C. or wherever I'm located within the 4-hour radius. And then you get to pick it up eventually. We have a follow-up phone call. Well, I'm no longer working on it in real time, so I need good notes. There's the, you know, the telephone game. Just every way that you can think of this being put into a more efficient lifeline is they're working on, right?
Yeah.
It's the question of when will it be truly efficient?
Now, I mean, I have a sense for the first time of the reason why possibly we've had these processing times. I mean, is it really like one file with the team sharing that one file? Are they on the cloud where collaborators can see the same thing, or not yet?
So there's a little bit more real-time ability to work through things than somebody needing to actually touch the football to move it forward, right? So there is a little bit more data use of collaboration, but you are looking at an entirely paper filing. And, you know, hopefully, the other thing I wanted to touch on is that part of the backlog is a bit of a capture of what IPO has experienced over the past few years. We've had a reduction in stampers available, so that's those things down. We've had budget constraints that prevent IPO management from being able to backfill those spaces, and now the future challenges you have relate to the ability to manage a new group of people to maintain efficiency there. So there's really a lot of moving parts that prevented IPO from being able to feel like 2022 right now. And so working on the new regulations takes manpower. And that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of slowdown is the ramp up and what's happened in the past. So for an investor who sees the processing times, that's all they see.
Right.
70 months. Why would I ever do this? Right. And so it really is, it's been a unique few years for IPO. And so the processing times are as much of that as anything. Because even with the paper filing process, we were starting to chop away at the backlog in 17, 18.
Well, let's all keep our fingers crossed and do everything we can to support IPO, increasing its efficiency and output. Bob, what can we do? What can we do to help this entire ecosystem? I really like to view our work as really as collaborative of all of the different constituents, both on the government side and on the private sector side. Of course, that doesn't always work, and sometimes we do have to have these more adversarial encounters. That just has to be that way sometimes. But short of that, what can we do to set up a collaborative environment with our regulators?
Well, I mean, I think that's critically important. The industry, from the outside, and everybody that's inputting into USCIS, on behalf of investors, we have good collaboration. The various associations, IIUSA is the leader, and you have AILA, and you have different groups that share best practices that confer on a regular basis to improve our side of it. But the problem has been, and I'll be interested in Greg's comment on this, and I think you acknowledged it, Greg. It's been like just a black hole. There've been very little, if any, dialogue recently between the industry and the government. And as Carolyn said, the ability for us to help the government do their job more effectively and efficiently should be a mutual desire, not a confrontational, well, we're the government and we don't want your input, we'll do what we're going to do. And we've not had that. We had for a short period of time quarterly meetings with the director. That was great. That was before COVID. We were encouraged by that to express our concerns as a board of IIUSA. We thought that was great to provide issues that were important to us and perhaps solutions to some of the issues from a business standpoint. But then that stopped. Of course, we had COVID. But even before the whole COVID thing, the processing times have been getting longer. And the response to inquiries are non-existent. You just don't know what's going on. So, it's been very frustrating for the industry, because if we did have an open dialogue, we truly could make this better. And I'm sure there's concerns on the government side that, there's privileged information and things we can't share. But somehow, I don't know how we get through that, Greg. Maybe it's just, a new leader in there, a different attitude, maybe the fact that we're through this lapse and through all the food fights on the industry side. We know we have that there'll be a concerted effort and interest on the part of the government to be more efficient from a processing standpoint, to make it easier to bring more money into the country and really view this as an economic driver for the country, which we so desperately need. Plus the brilliance of the people that we bring into this country, it's good for the long-term future. So I think the Behring settlement maybe begins a dialogue, even though that's somewhat limited in terms of what the scope of that dialogue will be, but it is a quarterly forced meeting, which we're hopeful as those dialogues happen, those meetings, there'll be maybe a little higher level of trust and understanding that we are truly trying to help, and we can help each other, and maybe we'll begin a new dialogue that will lead to more increased dialogue. But I'd like to see more members of IPO and various different areas of the government attend conferences. They have in the past, but then that kind of stopped a little bit, and be willing to just sit down and dialogue.
What are the barriers, Greg?
That's a good question. I think Julie Harrison probably went to one of your conferences. Sarah Kendall might have. I know that our new chief, Alyssa Emmel, is wonderfully talented, and she has a lot on her plate. The past year has brought more challenges than most leaders would want to collect at once. Post-pandemic lapse, potential changes, increased compliance, now staffing to meet the needs of the RIA while working with USCIS to make sure that
It's a big job.
in line with the law, and who knows whatever other things are on her plate. I think she's highly capable. I think it will come with time, and I think that at our engagement meeting, she took a step in our direction with her comments, and she identified a few potential things that I think we can look at with more than just fingers crossed. I think we can count on her. She said that she was going to increase staffing. She was going to create more public-facing content that could help people with going through forms, such as a video on how to fill out these forms and things like that. I don't know that things are going to happen as quickly as she would like them to, or as USCIS would like them to. But I do see signals. Like, if you weren't at that engagement, you might think that USCIS is trying to act like the NSA and just be like super secretive. But I don't think that that's their intent. I think that just for whatever reason, at a managerial level at USCIS down, and I think that, you know, if it was just Alyssa, she'd probably be able to make things happen a little bit faster. And USCIS may be fearful about future litigation. I don't know. I don't know if that's a barrier. If there's hesitancy from that, it's unfortunate, because, you know, who else to tell you how good the product works except its users? And so if you don't have that input, like if you're not looking at the Google reviews, you don't know what the customers think of you, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of thought that presented in the right way, and I'm not suggesting there's only one right way, but surely there is a thirst within the adjudicator core. How best can I do my job? You know, this is really hard stuff. This is complicated. How can I better understand these structures, these parties, these permutations, without giving away authority or the flexibilities and, you know, any of that, but enhance the ability to understand and adjudicate these cases? I would think, why would, you know, of course they want that. You know, and you know, I sort of viewed the challenge on our side as being, how can we package this information as an offer in that way, you know?
Yeah, I think the timing of everything happening now really highlights the need for the industry to be heard and to be invited to the table and iron out things before they get worse. You know, I used to say that the IPO is creating jobs for U.S. attorneys, not for, you know, the people who need it, just by, you know, inviting people to come to court to seek clarification when they could provide it themselves.
Well, hopefully we'll be turning to you, Greg, for helping things on our side. We want to get the message through that we want to help. We want to help you. And we think we can be really, really helpful, and you can benefit from the information that we have to offer. We all, I think it'll be for the good of us all. What now? I think we're ready to kind of pivot and just peek ahead a little bit. Bob, as leader, you know, you've kind of you've been at the helm. You've taken us to the other side. We're ashore now. What does take us to sort of the long view? I mean, the next big advocacy push is going to be toward another long-term reauthorization, maybe going for permanent EB-5 regional center program authorization in 2027. And then there's just what we got to do the next year in 2023, looking ahead to regulations and policy implementing the RIA. As industry leader, how are you thinking about the future? Are you thinking about 2027 and what we have to do? Are you thinking, you know, are you more focused on what we got to do in the short term? Tell us your perspectives on the next steps.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there are probably multiple answers to the question. We definitely are focused on the immediate, no question about it. I mean, you mentioned we've been discussing some of the issues, processing times, and, you know, how do we open the line of communication, you know, with the agency so that, we can both get better and be more efficient on behalf of the clients for our investors. But we're also thinking long term. Our objectives are, of course, to obtain a permanent authorization for the program, and that's going to take a concerted effort by the industry to align parties, both parties within Congress, to help them understand that this really should be looked at as an economic development tool, even more so than an immigration tool. And the immigration issue is just so toxic. We get kind of wrapped up into that. And I think as the program settles in and we see less of the problems we've had in the past, and we do a good job as an industry of educating the public, of educating Congress with respect to the very, very strong and significant benefits of EB-5 and what it can do for the country, then we can push for a permanent authorization. We also, one of our key objectives is to obtain more visas. We think the program, if properly positioned and understood and working properly, has unlimited potential in terms of drawing capital into the United States. So we're looking at the big picture, and some of the things that we're doing, we've already authorized as a board of directors of IIUSA a PAC, which we've never had before. So there will be, and you'll hear more about this at the beginning of the year, an IIUSA political action committee. That will be the entity that will be managed by a third party, made up of a board of advisors and professionally managed to allow people within the industry to contribute, to provide a war chest, if you will, to fund activities with members of Congress, to show them that there is a larger voice that is supportive of this industry. In the past, when we've done fundraisers, they've been personal contributions or from companies, but not necessarily noted as or attributed to EB-5, IIUSA. We think that will give us a bigger voice within Congress, and we're pretty excited about that. That's a strategy that was recommended by George and Aaron Grau. George is our lead lobbyist, and it's something that's been very effective for other industries. We're also working right now, we've already begun the work to put together a EB-5 caucus within the House, similar to, the various caucuses that exist right now, to have a working group that is committed to EB-5 to, again, broaden support for the program. And we're continuing to work nationally with cities, counties, municipalities, states, to help them understand, in the governor's office, in the mayor's offices, the positive impact of EB-5, to bring them on board to support this program, especially now that it's going to be more widely spread, the dollars and the economic impact. And we think that'll be very effective in terms of our efforts to get a permanent authorization in 2027, obtain more visas. And at the same time, we need to do this in concert with USCIS to improve the product, if you will, from a processing standpoint, and get back to some of the processing times we had in the mid, 2015, and that period of time where it was reasonable in terms of how long it would take to get approvals, and you kind of knew, how long it was going to take. And from a marketing standpoint, you could tell people, the guidelines show that they're running at 12 months, sometimes quicker than that, maybe a little bit longer, but it was pretty solid. And then we kind of morphed up to 70 months or whatever it is. And that's a problem in the marketplace. So, but we can fix that. And I'm pretty confident that, and I feel good about Greg's comments and some people I've talked to in the government, that there is a concerted effort and interest in improving performance, improving the product, and making things more efficient. Because once they make more things efficient, it's less costly for the government. There'll be more fees coming in. It's kind of a win for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge proponent in needing a quicker cycle. We need more and more speed, more volume, more capacity. Greg, what are your thoughts? I mean, what do you think the next year and the next 5 are going to look like?
I was just taking notes here based on what Bob said, and the gap I see is that future investors are not yet constituents of representatives of Americans. So you have to kind of get out there and show them what the value is for their location potentially, or just for the greater good of all of us, whether it's from an infrastructure point of view or rural or TEAs or just your broader market economic development that helps us all once it actually continues the way it should. So I hope that works. I hope you get some attention there, because I think that Congress, as we've seen, is hugely important to what we do, and getting us out past 5 years would be a nice goal to look at, and that starts now, I believe. Also at the grassroots level, emailing the customer service inbox is an opportunity to create a record of inquiry at the USCIS level. So in addition to our efforts to reach out to them, I encourage everybody to send questions to USCIS. If it's general policy questions, it doesn't have to be case specific, but it can be, tell me more about redeployment, or I have a question about this form. And I think it's another opportunity for them to collect data about what the feedback is in real time from the users. You might be disappointed to learn that you're probably not going to get an immediate response, but I think that the more push there is, the more opportunity there is for IPO and USCIS to look at each other and say, this is actually happening in real time. And it's not letters from professionals. It's actually, individuals coming in here, and they might be able to use that in a useful way in addition to our efforts. I'm bullish on IPO in the short term. I think Alyssa's a great leader, and I think that she's taken strides that other leaders have kind of shied away from, like a monstrous project to try to take data capture and scan of the 829s is only going to lead to more efficiency. Carolyn, you and I won't have to drive into work to trade a file. We can work from San Francisco and Miami, Florida on these cases, and we don't have to work in the DC, community. They'll be able to hire nationwide. They'll be able to fix the rates depending on the amount of work that needs to get done. It's specific to one part of the adjudication. And so they're going to be able to create a lot more flexibility from a business point of view. And what that looks like for them from a government point of view is to be determined. But those steps should definitely pay off and should be spread out amongst current investors and potential ones. So I like the short-term future for IPO. When you add in now more hiring to try to get back to at least 27-18 levels and maybe earlier, it's something that's commensurate with demand. I think we're going to get there.
Greg, do you have a sense of whether, so that's wonderful to hear. You seem to have a lot of confidence in Chief Emil, which is great.
Yeah.
Do you think there is support for her for IPO leadership from IPO's bosses further up?
Above my pay grade. I have
visibility there.
Just seeing it, conversations, I can only glean so much, and I know things change. So I wouldn't be able to speculate on that, not in a credible way anyway, because you never know what's going to happen in government.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a piece of data that we won't get, on the private sector side. If IPO is not getting enough support from the higher ups within DHS, no one's going to be public about that. So maybe that's where our PAC and our advocacy could come in, Bob, is, if something is not working, to give our regulators the support that they need to efficiently run the program. We could be helpful.
Yeah, perhaps. I
But
mean,
we need to talk. We're not going
yeah,
to know what the issues and the problems and the challenges are unless we know, unless we're told.
yeah. And Greg, your comments, it was interesting to me about, encouraging people to send emails or communicate. And I get, don't take this the wrong way, but I mean, and I hear this in the industry, people make inquiries and you get the response back, the automated response.
Right.
And then we just all assume that nothing ever happens with it. I mean, do those messages actually, are they logged? Are they reviewed? Is there a process internally to take them into consideration, or are they just go into the ether?
I think Section 107 of the RIA commands a more transparency in terms of what they're doing with these questions. And it's another TBD. Like, are they going to report back to us? Bob Kraft emailed us 10 times about this one day. We should do something about it. I don't know to what extent they're actually going to take the data and push it forward, what their timeline is. But I think that part of what we like about the RIA is, in terms of keeping each other accountable, is maybe there's a little bit more of an ability for us to keep them accountable as well.
Amen. Well, we are here and we will take some questions and give folks a couple of minutes to send questions our way. There's a Q&A box on the bottom. And so I encourage you to use that. You can use chat if that's more familiar to you. And we'll stick around and take a few questions. Otherwise, contact information, if I may, include both of yours. I encourage our folks to visit these incredible websites. Firstpathway.com. You're going to see a beautiful video right when you land on the homepage. You're going to see a picture of Bob as well, because I know you have not gotten enough of him on this brief event. So do check out firstpathways.com and BehringEB5.com. Fabulous website. So definitely check that out as well. There's a ton of information there. And you can learn more about both these heavy hitting players in the EB-5 space from their websites. Well, I know we're super busy, all of us. This is the 956 and the 956G season. We've got to get our filings in by December 29th. So I will let us go, but please be open to questions. I'm sure people will want to know more about you and have more questions for you as well.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, Carolyn. It was great. Always great to see you. And thanks for everything you did.
Thank you,
On
Bob.
behalf of the industry, you were a big player behind the scenes.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, Greg.
Great being with you.
Nice to meet you. And I echo what you said about Carolyn and Bob. Without you, I'm not sure where we'd be. And there's a lot of people who deserve a lot of credit pushing this thing forward. I'm glad to be part of it.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah,
Be
Merry
well.
Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.